started to record this. All right. Hello, Facebook. How's everybody doing? I am so excited to be here with you tonight with our special guest, Selena Stone from Foundations Educational Coaching and Consulting. Hey, Selena, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for coming on tonight.
I'm so excited. I'm like really ready. I'm got to figure out how to share. Oh, I got it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Go ahead. So while you're doing that, yep. All right, folks. Okay. To my sped teachers that are on here tonight, you're going to have to get your big girl pants on because we're going to talk about something that might ruffle some feathers, but needs to be talked about. Definitely needs to be talked about. And so I am so excited. I'm so excited because this topic, would you agree, Selena, is sometimes a topic of or a source of stress and contention in schools.
You nailed it.
All right. So, Selena, tonight we are going to talk about inclusion, but not just inclusion, not just inclusion. You talk about, oh, inclusion is great for students and, all that stuff. That's not the part we're talking about. We are talking about what inclusion teaching is like for teachers. So we've been talking about all month long behavior management success, right? And we know that to have successful behavior management in your classrooms, you have to have teachers that can work together.
That's it.
Right?
That's it.
That's it.
Live is over. That's it. We're done.
Live is over. That's it. That's it. Just work together. It's all good. Just start working together.
Yep.
So Selena, tell us a little bit about your background and why you are qualified to talk with us about this tonight. Because I know you are.
Well, first of all, once again, I'm so excited. I have been waiting for this conversation. So thank you for asking me to join you in having it, but also thank you for having it because it's a conversation that we just don't have. So a little bit about my background. I have been in the world of education for going on 15 years now. And I am a secondary educator, gen ed. My focus, my love is English. But when I started teaching, I actually started teaching, you get the first job that you could get. And so I was like, whoever is going to hire me.
About it too.
Look, listen, I didn't ask no questions. I said, oh, you offering it? Yeah, I should have asked some questions, but that's okay. And they hired me and it was at an alternative setting. And it was for students who were placed. So everybody had an IEP. This particular campus, most students had, and correct me in terms of how to say it, emotional disability. So we had learning, but we had a lot of ED students. And so that was like my first 2 years as in my career. And I was not certified. I did not have, a SPED background. I was just like, who would hire me? And they did. And then after that, I went to a public school gen ed setting. And that's when I met what is known as the inclusion experience. Of course, being a gen ed teacher, but having an inclusion teacher in my classroom. And ever since then, it's been pretty much every year. In the least restrictive setting. Of course, we want our kids, the majority of kids who can be successful in that setting, to participate in it. And so most, especially core content subjects like myself, usually state tested, would definitely having a co-teacher and an inclusion teacher in the room. So that's been 15 years.
15 years.
15 years, most of which in that type of setting. Yes.
So just to clarify, you do have special ed background because, or let's say special ed experience.
There we go. Yes.
Okay. All right. And you have been for 13 years then the gen ed teacher in an inclusion classroom.
Yes.
Okay. So here's where the loaded questions begin, right? All right, she's ready. She's ready. I know my girl's ready. All right. So a lot of times special educators come in and they say, these gen ed teachers don't want to work with me. These gen ed teachers they just want me to do everything, right? These are things that I have heard folks saying. I don't know how to talk to them. I don't know. I'm treated like an aide. Right? So these are some things they say on the special ed side. How does it feel for you on the gen ed side?
Okay, now you did start by saying some things might ruffle feathers, but it's
I did. Yep. And let's just preface this. The goal at the end of this is for everybody to understand each other and come to a better working knowledge. So the goal is not to cause strife or trouble or difficulty or point fingers. It's not that. The goal is to have a challenging conversation that's not being had, to do it with honesty and respect and love and care, with the goal that maybe some people might take some tidbits back to their partners tomorrow or whatever day after they watch the replay, and have some more skills, some more strategies, some more opportunities to improve their craft.
I love it. I love it.
All right.
And so you said a key word. You said a key word. And I want to be very clear, in the 13 years or so that I've been a part of that co-teaching partnership, and that's the word you said partners. It's been in different districts, in different states, in different school settings. And so I do want to preface and say the expectation and just how it looks will vary campus to campus and district to district. But it's a partnership. But the thing about this partnership is it is blind dating, where your parents set you up and one person is like, excited and they have, a certain perspective, and the other person is like blindsided because they didn't even know they were being set up. And then the date, I'm creating this whole picture, and the date is in, I want to say, you only have 30 minutes to get ready for the date. And you already had a stressful day at work. So you already look reckless, right? And you only have 30 minutes to get ready for that first impression. That is what it feels like, at least on the gen ed side.
Okay. Well, that's stressful just to think about.
It is, and it's stressful because, when you go into education, I received I didn't even take a full course. I'm trying to think back how many years. I didn't have a course when it came to special education. I just had it was like a PD of sorts that you had to just get a few hours that was a part of the certification process. So in my entire graduate studies, I'm learning all the things about being a great teacher, best instructional practices, learning my content really well and how to deliver it. And I get through the program, but for this certification, they're like, oh, you just have to sit in this like 2-hour course and learn everything about special ed, IEP, and all these other acronyms that you know nothing about. And then you're like, okay, so if you throw it at me like that, I guess it's not really maybe that important, or I guess it's not something that I have to worry about my first year. And then you go in your first year and there goes the blind date. And you're like, oh, so you couldn't give me more notice, you couldn't give me more information, and you couldn't let me prepare before this.
Wow. Well, that in experience in and of itself clears up a whole lot of things.
Yes.
It sure does, because on the special ed side, there's a lot of talk, at least for me, there was when I was in college, a lot of talk about, going in and the whole, I'm forgetting the word. I want to say sequence. It's not sequence, continuum of services, right? From most to least restrictive and all the places you could be, and still not a ton about forming relationships and working collaboratively. That is one thing that I would really love to, I'm very passionate about getting into colleges and collaborating with colleges, because like you said, they have to teach the content. They have to. That's what our states say. That's what our certification exams are like, and they do a great job at doing what they need to do. However, there's this whole other piece for gen ed and for sped about how to form those relationships. So now these sped teachers know that this is a possibility, but don't know how to come and talk to somebody who's on this blind date that doesn't even know they're going to be on this blind date.
Yes. Yes.
That feels a little bit like a setup.
Yes. What's really interesting is, a lot of times when we look at the gen ed and the inclusion teacher dynamic and relationship, it does feel like a setup that's systemically in place to almost fail.
Ooh, let's talk more about that.
You are asking two adults with two life experiences, two professional histories and experiences and stories to come together and form this perfect union as they serve their kids. And remember, now in the least restrictive environment, you have your class sizes of 30 to 40.
Yeah.
So to serve all the kids, and there's first of all, I never took a course that was relationship 101. I feel like in life, if we had courses called relationships 101, we'd be in a much better position. But that's not what this conversation is. So I'm just going to throw that out there and let them catch it.
Maybe that's another live we'll do, Selena.
And okay, I'm here for it. But people, you have two people also coming together with two different levels of trauma. And so that's a lot. Yeah. Without 34, in my case, teenagers. So now you add 34 teenagers, and we see the dynamics with a lot of parents where we know we could play mommy like this, and then we know when to go to bed. And the one thing, I don't care what age, the one thing I know about probably all kids, but I can speak for adolescents, is they know how to manipulate people. They read people, they read their teachers to the T. So the first couple days, all they're doing is sitting back watching your dynamic. So not only are you on this blind date, you are on this blind date being recorded. And everything that you do right, as well as everything that you do wrong, is going into and being downloaded into their brains, so that, and if you don't even have time to come back and say, hey, let's reflect, let's heal. Because, the first couple weeks of school, everybody is dragging themselves out. We're like, oh, Jesus, let us go at 3-4 o'clock. So it's not even like you're staying after school to talk about, let's reflect on what happened, it's just not feasible.
Nope.
And sometimes you don't get that first type of conversation until the first PD day. And then even when you think about it, our PDs are separate. So especially at the secondary level, where we have PDs before school, the English department has their own PDs. Math has it. So you're already separating. So when do we get to even meet each other?
Wow. Wow. So it's like meeting the whole family. So Selena, I'm actually thinking about like, and I don't typically watch these shows, but I know what they're about, right? Like The Bachelor or The Bachelorette, right? And you go and you've met the whole family, and you know grandma, and you know Gigi, and you know auntie, and all the people, but you don't really know your partner.
Like, you done met Bebe's kids. No, like,
And then you're the favorite auntie and you don't even know your partner. Wow.
My first co-teaching relation, and it's funny because they're so memorable. And I want people to understand that experiences might be different, but it's memorable. So, and we could get back to that later, but I remember my first co-teaching relationship. And it was very different because, again, coming from probably the most restrictive environment where I was TAC 2 certified, which meant when students, we had to go hands-on, we had to put them in a restraint, take them to the floor, unfortunately. And this was at a high school. So I was doing this with kids that ranged from about 14 to, we went all the way up to 21.
Right.
And so even though I'm coming from that background, I'm like, but I'm in Gen Ed now. I don't have to worry about any of these things. These kids act great. Y'all, and I worked in the hood. So I was like, what, what is happening? But I remember two conversations with two different inclusion teachers. The first year, I had a conversation, and I remember she told me that I was not essentially aggressive enough. Like, I wasn't handling the classroom behaviors, and I didn't have classroom management under control. And to a certain extent, I would agree, because this was technically my first year in a gen ed setting. So I take all of that. But what she explicitly said was because I don't yell at the kids. And my response was, I'm not a yeller. And not only am I not a yeller, but again, when I was at the most restrictive environment, we were taught, first of all, you don't escalate the situation. So everything I did was about de-escalating. So when the student raised their voice, and this was at a middle school, when the student went higher, I went lower.
Go lower. Yep.
When I felt my tension rising, I stopped and I breathed, took a breath. Yep. So through her lens, it was, well, Miss Stone isn't doing anything, because and through my lens, I'm like, I'm doing all the things that I know how to do. And, so it's things like that I don't think me and her even had a conversation about that, because the whole year went by and it was just tension the whole entire year. I felt as if she wasn't doing enough academically. And, what I've seen is that, so the next year, I had a new inclusion teacher. I don't know why. I didn't chase anybody away. I did not. I don't even think she stayed after school. It had nothing to do with me. But the next year, I had a new inclusion teacher, and she was completely different. My first year, she was a veteran teacher. She was a Black woman. She was always loud. I refer to her as like the screaming banshee. She was always yelling. And the second year, it was someone my age, so we were both new, a white woman, and she did not really yell. So now it's like, what do I do?
Right.
We had a better dynamic. It wasn't perfect, but it was better. Because we talked a lot more and we collaborated a lot more, and we were both growing and learning. And what was interesting was, at the end of the year, the whole team got together because we survived. That was a survival year for the whole team and the whole school. So I want to be also clear with the dynamics of the school surviving. But me and her, we all went out, we're having, a bite to eat. And I will never forget, she told me, she said, Selena, I remember the first day I walked in your classroom. And I think our assistant principal wanted us to, have that. What was your first impression? And I was excited because I knew I was great. I was like, what you gotta say? And she goes, I felt like when I walked in, you gave off the presence that this is my room. Mm-hmm. And so she did not feel like she had space. Mm. And I looked at her and I remember, and I'll say her name because we're still actually, we follow each other. And I was shocked. I said, Brittany, what? You felt that about me? She was like, I felt like you were like, look, okay, so that's your role, go over there. And you just kept taking control. And I was kind of floored. But then again, when you're reflecting and when you're honest with yourself, mm-hmm. I stopped and I was like, but you're right. And and I told her, I said, but it had nothing to do with you. It was because of this first year experience that I realized, well, when I walk into the class, I need to step in a certain way. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize that me, having more of a presence with my students was actually turning away the help that was there to support me.
Wow. Wow. So that's fascinating because I've heard both gen ed teachers say special ed teachers aren't doing enough. And I've heard special ed teachers say gen ed teachers won't let me do enough or aren't doing enough or won't work with me, or whatever on both sides. But what I hear you saying now is it's often one big mess of confusion. And the school, like you said, it kind of like a setup. There is no time given. Mm-hmm. There's no time given. And I think administrators, I often hear administrators say, I want more time. Like, I'd love to be able to give more time to my staff. So I don't think that administrators are even saying, oh, too bad, so sad. Like, I think it's just this one big mess of things that need to have conversations about, and really change needs to be had.
Yes.
But man, I really appreciate you sharing those two stories, because even though they were both very, very different, mm-hmm. what I heard from both of them is they were two different miscommunications.
Yes.
So
it's all about communication.
Right.
It's all about communication. I think the communication goes all the way back to what are our roles? Mm-hmm. And that's a layered question, because what is my role as a gen ed teacher in terms of what the district is telling me? Mm-hmm. What is the role of the inclusion teacher in terms of what the district is telling me? Mm-hmm. Then your school has their own definition of what the role, because when your evaluator comes in, right, they have a different interpretation of what they expect to see when they walk in. Mm-hmm. And then as teachers, we have our own definition in terms of classroom management and even little things like systems. Yep. When class starts, how class ends. And then it goes all the way down to even parents and students, because when it comes time to contact a parent, who's calling?
Who's doing it? Right.
And that really, really manifested when I moved on, fast forward a few years later. And I will say this district, because they had a very different way of inclusion, and that's New York City DOE. Okay. So I was in Queens. Okay. And this was the first time the inclusion teacher had their own roster. Like, their students were under their, like, I couldn't take attendance.
Oh, okay.
So before, I'm coming from, all students are under me, which is another, layer, like when it comes to like test scores and data, and curriculum, but all students are under me. So when my inclusion teacher comes in, like, she has her, roster just to kind of take notes and keep track. But no, in New York City DOE, unless they've changed it, it got to the point where if my inclusion teacher was absent, they sent a sub, because legally that is a teacher.
A whole roster.
In a whole roster. And so the dynamic shifted then, because it's almost like, again, systemically, there was more separation. But in the role in the classroom, you would never want to say, okay, now you take your attendance. Absolutely not. So for the first few weeks, the kids knew I was the main teacher, because again, I was the main one. But they actually did not know her role. So we talk about roles, even when it came to how students saw her in the classroom, they were like, why is she here? Like, some people who didn't know, there were sped kids, and it was, so some students, and because everybody was my student. So when I tutored everybody.
Right.
And it wasn't until a couple months in that, certain things happened that, students started to get a little bit more hip, and they were like, oh, okay. And it wasn't like, oh, okay, oh, no, it wasn't like that. But they did start to understand, oh, okay, so she serves a different function. And, but systemically, I mean, there are so many definitions, and some of them contradict.
Yeah. So what do you do then, right?
What do you do?
What do you do then? So Selena, I want to kind of take all of this huge ball of wax, shall we say, that is inclusion. And this month is about behavior management success, right? For us. So what do we do? So now these are the situations the adults are in. While I'd like to say we can make some change, education doesn't like to change very fast.
No, it does not.
Nope. So this is where we are. How does this impact our students, and what can we do for our students to help them be the most successful they can be?
Oh, those are, how you just gonna ask both those questions at the same time?
Pick one. Pick one. Here, toss them up in the air.
Oh man. The impact is real. And I say that because I know a lot of my stories, of course, was also pre-pandemic. I'm about to age myself. A lot of my stories was also pre-TikTok, pre-Snapchat. And so what I am seeing now as an instructional coach supporting the gen ed teacher in an inclusion setting is that it tremendously impacts our students. And it's very unfortunate. Right now, students get lost a lot easier because of paperwork, because of the divide, because of the lack of communication. I feel as if before it was, we knew that there were two different groups, but we're gonna figure it out. We might not like each other's style, but we're gonna figure it out. But now, and I'm not gonna mention my current district, but right now they're actually getting ready for, I guess, a big review coming up next year, major review. And so
like
they're
audit kind of thing.
Like, yes, an audit.
Okay.
And so, of course, the special education department is a big part of the audit, especially when you're dealing with paperwork and legal concerns and things like that. So they have started getting ready for the audit that's next school year.
Right.
So in an already tense environment, they are requiring inclusion teachers to do almost twice as much paperwork. The documentation process is just ridiculous. Like, I I've heard the description. I haven't seen the actual system, but in conversation, I'm just like, you have to do what? For what? Every day. And so it's now taking them out of the classroom more. Remember, this is inclusion.
Right.
And I'm going to be very transparent. This is where the feathers might be ruffled, but coming from the Gen Ed side, what I can say is, you know, when you have teachers who are either novice, when you have teachers who are already checked out, the blame is not, you know, I'm not placing the blame on anyone, but it's very real where they are mentally and their stress level. When you give them an inclusion class, they're like, okay, this is part of what I do. But then when you remove the support, then it becomes a feeling of you dumped these kids on me. And I'm very intentional and purposeful when I say these kids, because I had this conversation with a Gen Ed teacher because that was the language she used. And I said, well, there's a concern right there. Because again, toggling both sides through the lens of a coach, I'm like, I understand when you're like, but they are, you know, they should be receiving more services. We get that. But to my Gen Ed folks, they are still your kids. And as soon as you start to use language like these kids and theirs and those, even if you don't use it in front of them, your affect is the same when you look at them. Your affect is the same when you interact with them, and they feel that.
Yep.
And so the divide that exists between that partnership is now poured out onto the kids. And how does it manifest? Through behavior. The kids are suffering.
Man.
It's clear.
Systemic issues.
All the way down.
All the way.
All the way down.
All the way. Well, how exciting is this?
This is not one of those. Jessica, this is definitely going to have to be a part B. Like, I'm not trying to invite myself back, but I'm inviting myself back.
you know, you're always welcome in my life. Yeah, this is a big deal. It is a really big deal, and it is affecting our students. And if you think that you can pretend, we just had this conversation with somebody else today. If you think as a teacher that you can pretend to care for a student, you can't. You cannot. As a human, you cannot pretend to care for someone that you don't care for. Not as a human. Other humans know that, whether they're tiny little humans or very old humans, they know it. So, that being said, are there things so we know the challenges, we know the blind date, we know you've met the family, we know you have no idea who your partner is, you know, we know you're not probably gonna have a really good chance to sit down together on school hours and figure this stuff out. What can be done? What are some things so we have people watching, right? They're like, okay, I was going to leave with some tips.
Yes.
Something that I can use tomorrow. And now I feel deflated and, you know, not deflated because of what you shared, but because these are all the things that they're facing. So let's help them out, Selena.
Yes.
Let's give them a few things that they can try tomorrow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. First, I would say, no matter what it takes, have that conversation with your partner. And the conversation, I mean, is one, what is the best way to communicate? Because sometimes it's just a form of communication. Some people are phone people. Some people are like, do not call my phone. Some people are text people, and be willing to meet in the middle. Right. Somebody's like, oh, I don't really text too well. And, they struggle seeing the phone. Then you might have to be the one to say, okay, I'll step out my comfort zone. Right. Because it's an actual thing. They really can't see the screen. But be willing to have that conversation, and sacrifice is going to have to be made in terms of time. Just be willing to, it could be lunch, right? It doesn't have to be long. So manage your time well when you do meet, but just saying, hey, can we grab, coffee in the morning? Do you mind coming early? I will bring you coffee, right? Or maybe after school one day, let's grab a bite to eat, and let's just talk about, what is working, what is not working. The second advice is just know that there are not all classrooms look the same when it comes to inclusion. So you might see something working in someone else's class, and that's great, but don't assume that you have to do it the same way. So asking each other, like, what method would work for you? And, for my inclusion teachers, when you're dealing with somebody who's novice, like your first or second year teacher, they're not going to be able to tell you what method. So don't be afraid to say, hey, listen, I've been in your room for a little bit. I think if we finish out the school year, if we want to finish out the school year strong, doing parallel teaching will work really, really well. Or doing like small group pullouts will work really, really well. Because I can tell you right now, gen ed teachers, even if we seem like we are like dominating the classroom and we got this and we don't need you, that is a lie. We are actually trying to pretend that for the kids.
Oh, it's so good to know.
Yeah, deep inside we're like, please.
It's all just a front for the kids.
Just for the kids. Just for the kids.
All right, you hear that, SPED teachers?
We
don't
need you.
Come out on it. Don't go in tomorrow and say, Selena said you don't know what you're doing and you're pretending for the kids. So let me help you. Don't do that. Right? That's not the way to have that conversation. But have in the back of your mind that maybe it's not actually all about you.
We are pretending. I promise you, we are pretending for the kids, because we know at the end of the day, we got to make sure we can at least fake as if we know what we're doing. But we want your help. We want your resources. Gen ed teachers, I need y'all to share those lesson plans. Not the night before. Let's stop. That's not fair.
It's silly out here. That's not fair.
Right. But even if it's not like flushed out, if you're like, but this is the idea, do you have, we're teaching, characterization, and we're reading this book. So I haven't done a lesson plans yet, but I want to let you know, like, the skills and the text, please bring whatever you have. Look, that's what we need. And on the flip side, because I've also heard, and I've experienced, I had an inclusion teacher who actually left mid-year because she relocated, and they gave me a new teacher who was math. And that math inclusion teacher, because they tried.
Hold on. Your ELA. Okay. And you got a math inclusion teacher?
Yep. They have to give me just somebody who was certified SPED, even if English was not her area.
Okay. So she had this, she was good with SPED, but she did not have any English certification.
No.
Okay.
No. But what I appreciated was she came in, did somebody else I'm still in contact with. She came in and she said, look, Stone, she said, I am math. That is because they did special ed with a content focus. So she said, I'm math. But what she said was, what I will do is I'm going to sit down while you instruct, and I'm going to learn, because at the end of the day, we're not teaching anything that any adult,
Right.
She said, I'm going to take the notes and do all the things. She said, and then I'll be able to assist. So right away, there was an expectation, and it was never any bitterness. I knew she was coming in the first 15 or 20 minutes when I delivered that tier 1 instruction. She was also receiving it. And it was really helpful, because if I'm instructing and she's like, girl, no, I'm still confused. What are we doing? That meant SPED or not. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yep. If the other adults in the room are confused, you got a problem. Yep. But I love that you guys had that conversation, and that's what that goes back to, right? That conversation.
Yes.
It's all about that conversation and communication.
Yes.
So I think the biggest tip, so while you were talking in the comments on Facebook, I added your tips in. So that's what I was doing, adding Selena's tips in there. But I think that, yeah. I think the biggest thing I hear you saying is find a way to communicate.
Yes.
Find a way to communicate.
You both have a right to take up space. You both belong in that room.
Yes.
Students need both of your expertise and your skill set. So if you let lack of communication keep you from giving the kids your best, that's a lose-lose situation. And it's not because you don't have the best, it's just because of lack of communication. So communicate.
Yep. It's because you've now succumbed to a system that says this really, that really pushes division.
Yes.
The system, not the people, the system, right? So like you said, take up space. I'm going to say disagree out loud with that.
Yes.
Right? Like these are things that Selena, you and I really believe in. We really believe in, you know what, disagree out loud with that system. Take up the space that you were meant to take up and do the job that you were meant to do for these kids. And I say it all the time, relationships can solve problems behavior management strategies can't even dream of.
Yes. Yes.
And they will see that between the two of you as staff members, and you will be able to treat the kids more respectfully because there'll be a whole different atmosphere. So, well, while I would love to continue this conversation, definitely schedule a part B. We've been on quite a while now. Selena, before we go, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being willing to have this conversation in public, out loud with me.
Of course.
So for any of you that don't know, many of you probably, I don't know if any of you would know, Selena and I and someone else, we have a lot of these conversations together often. And we have a lot of passion in helping others in this area. And this is just one small part of the things that we talk about, but we are very excited and passionate about supporting this communication and these relationships. So thank you so much, Selena, for being willing to do that. One last question I want to ask you before you share where to find you is, how do you take care of yourself, Selena?
So I will say, I'm going to give you top 3 things.
All right.
Okay. 1, I unplug. I put my phone on do not disturb and I do not care. Now I know some people can't do that because some people have to contact you, but then you put them on the like VIP list on your phone. I don't know what it's called. So that no matter what, they can call you. I say even go as far as get a landline and only give the VIP folks the landline number. But whatever you do, because there are too many people are attached, the emails coming to the phone, the work phone. When I say my phone's on do not disturb at about, it used to be at 4:00, but now I pushed it back to 7 p.m. But
thank you.
It makes but it does make all the difference when I can unplug, come home, and just say, you know what happened, but now this is my time and I'm going to enjoy it. The second thing is, and I know you probably don't know what it is, but that little black thing right there, I do exercise. I particularly love dancing, and Jessica knows this. So I just recently finished my 100 days of dancing. So I will go to dance classes, but doing something physical, like if you enjoy walking your dog, gardening, But doing something, your body needs to move, and I'm not a biology teacher, but I know like the endorphins and all the ends,
all the ends. There's a lot of stuff going on in there.
All the ends that they told me about. But it's so important. And then the third one is just, as much as you unplug, which is great, make sure you always have an outlet, so if you unplug but you have one person you can always go to. For me, my outlet is journaling. I could go to people. I have great conversations, even with this woman right here on the screen. I go to her all the time, but my outlet is journaling. So unplugging, doing something physical that's good for you, and having an outlet so that when you do need to release more emotions, whether it's somebody or something, like journaling, those three things have kept me sane, y'all. All three.
I love that. I love that you have, it's like you have something emotional, something physical, and something just to be.
Yes.
So you're taking care of all of you.
Yeah, it's mind, body, soul. You got it. All aspects.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that, Selena. Yes. My other question, but I think we talked about this the whole time, and a piece of advice or a challenge to new SPED teachers. I don't know if there's any, but I think our whole conversation,
I think it did.
I think we covered that. So in closing, Selena, share the exciting things you have coming up, what you got going on, and where people can find you.
Absolutely. So the fact that, and I didn't do this on purpose, I just realized when you said communication, I was like, oh my gosh, because at Foundations, that is our focus. And this whole month, we're focusing on tough conversations with like parents and students. It's the end of the year. Some tough conversations are coming up, right? Yep. So if you or someone you have anxiety and fear about having those tough conversations, specifically with parents, there is a masterclass coming up with myself, and I have a phenomenal co-host who is amazing. It's coming up May 6th at 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern. It is free. So again, like
now that's unheard of, folks. That's unheard. You are going to get, if you go to this masterclass, I know these two ladies. You're going to get all the goods. They're talking about freebies. They're talking about dropping the goods. They're talking about practical support. This is something you could easily pay a couple $100s for.
So make sure you register so you can connect with me and find that information directly either on my website, which is foundationsedu.org. And then follow me on Instagram, foundations.edu.cc. There's a lot of dots. Stay with me. Okay, so foundations.edu.cc, or on LinkedIn, which is foundations-edu-cc, because they wouldn't let me do the dots.
They wouldn't let you. Gosh. All right. So, Selena, what was the website?
Foundationsedu.org. And there's a whole tab called publications and resources, or there are already, things there for you, but there is definitely a sign up. So our master classes right now are free. And when I say free, it's not just the class. If you thought this conversation was great, and this was a great, I'm waiting for her to tell me when we're having like part 2, part B. But if you thought this was great, that master class is going to give you so much to help you overcome your fears with having those conversations, because you can't not communicate.
You have to communicate.
You have to. So we're going to help you.
Wow. That's powerful stuff. Awesome. Well, I will be in that masterclass. I am very excited for you and your co-host, Ms. Cherie, and everything she brings from the parent perspective. So It's going to be awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. This was fun.
This was so fun. So fun. I love that I feel like this is a first step in many.
Yes.
So All right. Well, Selena, as I close out this recording, I also have to close out the Zoom. So I am also going to say goodbye to you now. Thank you very much, my friend. And we will, I'm looking forward to everybody signing up for that masterclass.
Yes. Have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.